and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Ji Xiaojun with Charlotte and David.
Hello.
Hello. And to start with, we are going to share with our viewers some feedbacks from our viewers. And the first one is Dr. Muhammad Al-Assar from Republic of Iraq. Thank you for writing to us. And he said, I'm a viewer from the Republic of Iraq. I would recommend expanding the scope of the topics discussed to be global and talking about similar topics that relate to different countries in addition to China.
I like that suggestion.
Remember, we had one episode about doing exercises, every day, twice, 10 o'clock and maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yep.
And this is about that. It's Rodolfo Luvega from Austria. Thank you again for writing to us. And about this doing exercise show, it was great. And he tried to find some radio broadcast exercises on the internet. Obviously, you didn't.
Oh, well, I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, but maybe basically in Chinese.
Yeah, and it also might be, exactly.
But who's going to exercise online? I mean, they're surfing online. You're going to stand up and exercise?
Yeah, but you can follow those exercises on the internet.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you very much for writing to us, and keep writing to us. Tell us where you are and what topics you might be interested in. What topics you want us to discuss. Something about China that you don't understand. Would love to include in our crossover. Anyway, move on to today's topic. And, well, basically it's several news stories we're going to share with you and also with our viewers. And the first one, it's about the highest building in Beijing. Not the highest in China, but the highest building in Beijing. So, pictures first.
Okay.
That's the highest building located in the very center of the CBD area in Beijing.
This building really is tall.
Yeah.
I can see it from my window at home.
But is that it's the new Guomao building? Right?
Yeah, that's
but
right.
it doesn't fit in. It's a different architectural style from the other.
It is. It's the third building of the China World Complex.
And just to give you some, figures over here, I don't know how many stories they have, but obviously, the elevator can reach the 80th floor, and they can reach the 80th floor in 38 seconds. So it's like a rocket.
Wow,
Whoa.
That's some G-force. I don't think I want to take that.
But the thing is, it doesn't feel comfortable with your ear, with all the air pressure. 38 seconds.
38 seconds? You'd just be a puddle of water on the elevated floor by the time you reach.
No, there has to be something that they can do to balance that, maybe.
Yeah, but it should be nice to have a cup of coffee on the 80th floor if the weather is good.
I was going to say, if it looks like that, it would be a lovely thing to go do.
Too bad.
You never know whether it's clear or not.
More than 10 miles away.
You never know.
Yeah. And just to clear the cloud of its safety, whether it's going to be safe enough if there's something like earthquake happening in Beijing, say the base of this high scraper goes deep as 23 meters, and besides that, there are 350 something like pillars going even further down.
Into the ground.
Into the ground.
So it's got an incredible foundation.
Yeah, and the deepest is 75 meters. So it's going deep down into the earth, 75 meters. So should be safe.
I should think so. It's about as deep as it is tall.
Yeah.
And talking about the high buildings in Beijing, the number of these high buildings, high skyscrapers, and well, not only in Beijing but in the whole country. But the number here is 98,000 high buildings in the whole country.
98,000?
98,000. Because in Beijing, when we say high building, it's higher than 24 meters. And in Beijing, if we say higher than 24 meters is high buildings, it's 8,000, over 8,000 in Beijing.
If that's your definition, that doesn't surprise me too much.
Yeah, but
that's true.
If we are talking about high buildings higher than 100 meters, in the whole country, that's about 1,100. And in Beijing, it's 40.
Wow.
And in Shanghai, it's about 200. or more
Yeah.
than 200.
The Shanghai skyline is very tall.
And it's increasing every day.
Yes, it is.
It makes sense when you have a crowded city like Beijing or Shanghai. The only direction to go is
Up.
Up in the air.
Right.
It's true.
And so we have some more pictures to show those high buildings in Shanghai. Well, it's not yet finished. And this is the future Shanghai Center is going to be 632 meters high. You know, the one in
Wow.
Beijing is 330 meters high.
So wait a minute, this is Pudong, right? That
In
was
Pudong. Yeah,
Wow.
a different angle, I guess.
Wow. That's high.
Wow.
Because those surrounding buildings there are really high.
Yeah.
And next picture shows the Shanghai World Financial Center and also the Jinmao Tower.
I like the new architectural style is no straight lines. That's straight lines are so 20th century. You know, everything is curly and twisted and everything. I like it.
So, I mean, it seems every city has this craze for high buildings. And what do you think are the reasons behind that? And then you mentioned one. It's
Yeah,
a
obviously.
populated place.
Yeah. Also, I think it's in terms of use of space. It's just the most economical use of space. And now that they have, like you say, the elevator technology is
38 seconds.
Right,
is
you
able
can-
to get you up and down,
Yeah.
and the buildings are getting more and more safe. They're also getting, I think, they're getting more and more environmentally safe,
Yeah.
friendly,
Yeah.
right? So it just makes sense to do it that way. And also, they have an iconic value, other than
That's true.
Julianne being the icon of
Crossover.
I mean, yeah, these things like in Dubai, the tall building there, these things have Eiffel Tower-like iconic value that you associate it with the city, and it adds to the skyline. So
It's true, and you know, I've often noticed that, and a lot of times in China, you'll find the world's first something, or the world's longest something, or the world's highest
yeah,
something.
highest,
You know, it's quite interesting, really, to see how many world firsts
Yeah.
China actually has. And I think also in more recent years, you know, it's kind of I'm sure it also is a pride thing. You know,
Yeah.
it makes everyone proud to have. I recently read a newspaper article about how in Beijing there's the world's longest bar. Yeah, at a hotel near the airport. They just
that's
opened the
interesting.
world's longest bar, and I thought, okay, that's
Well, there's
you know.
that highest reception hall or highest
Exactly.
but you
hotel.
can get even higher at that bar, I'll tell you.
But I think that deserves to be, I think, added into this equation of.
You're right. You're right.
That's actually exactly what some officials are saying in China, why these cities are building all these high buildings. One of the reasons they gave out is, you know, we need to have something to show the progress of our development. You know, we've developed and we are capable enough to build a high building like this. Maybe a face thing again.
Yeah.
It could be. But also, I mean, we're also talking about a country with the largest population in the world. So if you look at it from that perspective as well, you know, a lot of people requires a lot of space. And, you know, the country's so big. So, like you were saying, David, you know.
But sometimes I just think, you know, to be working or living in a place like that, you're hundreds of meters above the ground,
Yeah.
and you're somehow isolated from the community or maybe the city virtually. I don't really feel psychologically comfortable, you know.
Well, you know, that's a good
To have a
point.
cup of tea, that's fine. To have a nice view of the city, that's all right. But if you have to stay there for a long time working in a place like that, in a concrete box.
Well, you know, and Beijing's also a very windy city.
Oh, yeah.
And when buildings get that high, you can feel the building move
The
when the wind picks up. I have friends that live in Chicago, and you know, Chicago in the States is known as the Windy,
Windy
City.
City, yeah.
And when they're up high in you know, high skyscrapers, they can feel the building
Yeah.
moving in the wind, which is good, I guess. I mean,
Free exercise.
well, better move with the wind than just stand still, you know. But
Yeah, there is the highest building in Taiwan, the 101 Plaza or 101 building, and they have this huge damper, you know, to compromise the wind movement.
Is it?
This is the 101 building. virtually it's a huge iron ball, you know. When the wind pushes you to that direction, it moves the other direction. So somehow it balances the force.
So it acts as a counterbalance.
Yeah.
A counterbalance. Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing technologically. Amazing.
And that's also a scenic spot.
You
take
can
pictures
tell,
of
yeah.
it. Just like the torch, you know, of the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games.
Exactly.
Why do I feel like I'm living in a science fiction movie these days?
I know, right?
Everything is so modern.
So fancy and
Space age,
high
futuristic.
tech.
Yeah, and the only thing I want to do with these high buildings is have a cup of coffee or tea
And then leave.
up there and go.
You're from the old China. You like the single story, the old Beijing Pingfang
If I can
dwellings.
afford one, you know, but, you know, high buildings are fine with me, but not too high.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree with Xiao Zhen.
Anyway, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, more news about architecture in China. And welcome back to Crossover, and more news about buildings or architecture, but this time it's in Shanghai. It's really about protection of architecture, protection of the old communities or old streets, old buildings. According to the new regulation released by the Shanghai government, it's been released in August. Say they're going to protect the 64 main roads in the old town. In other words, these 64 roads will not be expanded or changed. And it's not only about these roads, these streets. It's also about, you know, all these communities.
You know, in Shanghai, I would think that that's a very difficult decision to make because, especially in Puxi, on the
old
western
part of the
side,
town, yeah.
the western side of the river, the streets are very narrow. And you have cars, you have people, you have bicycles. And oftentimes you'll see bicycles on the sidewalk because there's no room for them in the street. And so to make a decision like this, I would think, you know, that's a difficult decision to make because Shanghai's got lots of cars.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah,
Huge
it's
city.
the
Metropolitan
same is
city.
true in Beijing, you know, as they widen the places. And, you know, the solution in a lot of American cities is to make certain places off limits to cars.
Oh, yeah.
But that's, I mean, the obvious place that I think of in Beijing is the traditional hutong, Nanwo Guxiang, where there's still a lot of residents live there, but it's clearly a walking area. But there are people that need to drive their car through it, and so you get this clash of cars and people. And, you know, if they expand it, they ruin the neighborhood. It's no longer the same kind of hutong.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's always a trade-off between modernization and cars and you know,
Well,
the
these are
problems of
the-
living people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are the pictures of the old, I guess, hutongs or the streets in Beijing. Well, these old streets in Beijing, they represent a different lifestyle. You know?
Right.
To be living in a high scraper, high buildings, and to be living in a place like that is different. And, well, I mean, those 64 streets are protected in Shanghai, but I guess Beijing, they've also released similar regulations protecting these hutongs. But again, the response from the public is just not enough. You know, Beijing should be better protected, and these old buildings should be better protected, better preserved.
Beijing and Shanghai are different, though, in some ways. Shanghai has other kinds of architecture. It has lots of Western Art Deco that's also needs to be protected. But it doesn't have the problem that the hutongs does, which is the basic building material is so substandard. I mean, those buildings, those hutong dwellings, were just not meant to last for hundreds of years. Really, they're basically wood and very cheap brick and plaster. You know, so the problem is how do you actually renovate them? And you can't do it without tearing the whole thing down and starting over again.
Yeah.
Whereas in Shanghai, you have a lot of these beautiful buildings that from the 20s and so forth. That it's pretty easy to preserve them and build
to
and add on to
restore
them. Yeah,
at
right.
the very least. And I also know in a lot of the hutongs here, you know, there isn't necessarily plumbing in every courtyard house. So there are community, you know, toilets that people will go to for the bathroom because they don't actually have a bathroom in their courtyards. I mean, there are all kinds of complications like that I think it also makes it a very difficult decision. You know, what do you do? I know there's a huge sort of debate going on now. You know, do we try to restore these hutong areas in Beijing? You know, the old neighborhoods, or you know, do we do we, make way and
Actually, in many cases, more than just one family live in one culture
Right.
building.
Right.
It's different families, many
Right.
families share one place, and it's always crowded, and then life is not always easy and convenient
Right.
Yeah.
in those places.
That's true. And so, on the one hand, I was just having a conversation with a friend about this the other day. On the one hand, they're beautiful and they are a part of Beijing's history, and you don't want to see them demolished. But on the other hand, for sanitation reasons, crowded reasons, if you think about it from that point of view,
Yeah.
It's understandable.
It's
Yeah,
substandard
it is
housing, yeah.
understandable.
The people that live there don't always have such nostalgic, warm feelings about those particular dwellings. They say, hey, we'd like to have an upgrade too. We don't want to be just tourist attractions.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
Good point. And what I heard is the story in Shanghai, because in Shanghai, as you mentioned, they had all these Western-style buildings,
Right.
very beautiful. But again, it's like Beijing culture buildings, different families, many families, they share one Western house. It was not spacious and not comfortable to live inside. What they did was, if all these families living in that place agree to move out to a new place, then this place will be protected by the government. The special fund will be allocated to protect this building, the Western building. So it's these are the new measures introduced by the local governments to protect all these buildings with a history.
Right.
But if you take a look at these pictures of some of the old streets in Shanghai, you see why they need to be protected and why they want to protect these streets. This is Hongshan Road, where you'll see lots of restaurants or bars or cafes and trees.
I think those are sycamore trees that are they've been there for a long time.
They have,
Yeah.
And the street is not too long, it's about 2 kilometers. But it's nice and place to
So
have
that is
walking.
preserve it as is, and especially the trees you don't want to cut down.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's one sad thing about Baishiqiao in Beijing. There's
One of
a
the streets in
long
Beijing.
street that had some beautiful trees on both sides, and they're all gone now.
Yeah, they have to be expanded, and
Right.
the government said, and they can't remove these trees.
Right.
If they are removed, they will die.
Yeah.
This is Shanyin Road. It's only 500 meters long. Well, these buildings are beautiful ones.
Yeah, look at that. And those trees again.
And this street is famous for all these old residential places for all these, famous people. So when these famous people lived there, they keep a history of this city.
One of the things I love about Shanghai is the mix of
Yeah, that's
Chinese
right.
influence and then international influence.
Yeah,
Whether
that's right.
it's British or European or American, it doesn't matter. But it's just a fabulous mix
That's right, because it's part of the city's history.
and charm. Yeah,
And charm, and,
yeah.
and you want to keep that, a 21st century high-rise building, is totally different from an Art Deco high-rise building. And you want to keep that there, as even though it's Western, it's still part of Shanghai's history.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, different cities have different ways of protecting their old buildings
Yeah.
and their history and their past, and obviously it is important to have a...
I always wonder when I see these new buildings, some of them in Beijing and also Shanghai, sometimes they're very startling, they're very new, they're very modern, they're very eye-catching, but I wonder if they're going to hold up for a long time. You know what I mean? Like some of these Art Deco, they're still beautiful buildings, even now. They're aesthetically pleasing.
They're classic.
Yeah, they're classic.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of these new styles we're seeing are going to become classics 50 or 100 years from now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They probably will, because just if you think about it, like Art Deco back in the day when it first came out was probably considered edgy and
Yeah, modern,
modern
little
and
avant-garde.
low
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you know,
And now it
just
looks
like-
just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just like furnitures, Chinese furnitures, the traditional ones made of hardwood.
That's right, yeah.
And the fancy modern style ones, and which one is going to last longer, you never know. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to present more stories about architecture in China. And welcome back to Crossover. And this next story is an interesting one, or a sad story. because it's reported in on one of the newspapers in here in September. One retired worker, 64-year-old in Zhengzhou in central China's Henan province, and he thought the houses were just too expensive. He couldn't afford to buy a new one, and what he did, because he lived on the ground. It was the first floor. His house was on the first floor, and what he did was he decided to dig up a new apartment underground. He spent 4 years digging up deep underground, and it's 6 meters deep, and he got himself a 50 square meter house.
Wow.
And he said if he could, he would work on to dig himself a 3-bedroom house underground.
Wow.
Well, it's good, interesting story because he somehow managed to solve his housing problem.
Yeah.
But it is also a sad one because the houses are just too expensive, and many of us couldn't just afford to buy a new one.
So in America, the houses are underwater, but here it's underground.
Underground.
Wow, and it took him so long to do this. How does it work? How is it heated? Is it cold in the winter? It must. I don't know how he did that. That's incredible.
And well, he's a miner. He's a former miner, so he knows all these technical problems.
He feels right at home down there.
I suppose.
And it's not hot in the summer and not cold in the winter, according to his experience.
Well, that's very innovative of him.
And but he don't know. He's not quite sure whether he could move on with his new project or not, because it's been reported, and everyone knows about it. And
is this legal? Is this legal?
Exactly. That could be the problem.
Yeah.
That could be the problem.
Yeah, I'm sure, because even though it's underground, I'm sure there are still a lot of codes that you need to make sure you aren't violating.
Right. Exactly. And one is if it is legal or not. The next question is if it is safe or not, because you're talking about the building above that.
Above that. Yeah, that's interesting. Huh? Charlotte, we have this idiom in English. You want to see my digs? My house,
That's right, digs.
He really can show you his digs.
That's right. Those are his digs.
Yeah.
So these are all these, innovative ideas of solving this housing problem. And this former miner, he decides to dig down underneath. And there are also there's another solution about containers being turned into a new house.
Oh, okay.
Pictures. These are containers being turned into a house. Obviously, it's more than one.
Containers.
Oh, shipping containers.
Shipping containers.
Shipping containers.
Oh, I see. Now I see it. Yeah.
Well,
Interesting.
These are abandoned ones, but they.
So are each of those a separate little dwelling?
Yeah.
It was much better than I was imagining. At least, they have windows and everything.
Yeah, they have everything inside. It's a living place. And the designer and builder of this project, say the shipping container turned into house project, they were waiting actually for the new house. It's not ready yet. They have to wait for another half a year. So before that half a year, they decided to have something
like this.
New.
Yeah.
I suppose that's not too different from like a mobile home.
I was just going to say.
Or a modular, something.
That's right.
The temporary.
Yeah.
A lot of movable housing, temporary housing.
Right, and a lot of mobile homes are just that size.
Exactly.
Really. Yeah.
Exactly.
And the shipping container houses could be fancy, could be beautiful. We have another one.
Those are made out of shipping crates? Wow.
Oh my goodness.
And this is in France.
But I guess I don't know much about architecture, but that must be pretty eco-friendly.
Yeah.
Is it comfortable to live inside a container
steel
house?
Metal
could be
box?
very hot. Because when I was in university, we went to Daqing, the petroleum field.
Yeah.
The living place for these people, for those workers, were basically the containers, shipping containers.
Yeah.
It was not comfortable. It was very hot inside.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, unless you have air conditioners.
I'm sure. But I think with those windows and stuff, if there are windows on either side, then there's a way for the air to circulate. You get reasonable air circulation. And that, I'm sure that must help a lot.
It's small, but you you put a sofa in there, you put some comfortable
Rugs
furniture,
or-
rugs. It could be quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
And when you move away, you just get it in a crane that comes down and puts you on a ship, and you can move somewhere else very easily. But-
When you talk about mobile home, that means you have an option. You know, you don't have to
Right.
live in that mobile home. But for these people, it seems that's their home.
Right.
Well, but they're like trailer parks and stuff in the States.
That
And
basically
that-
they sit
I
down
mean,
for good almost.
They're
yeah.
not moved around all the time,
Yeah.
but they technically could be.
Right, right.
But they stay in one spot.
But housing is always a big problem in big cities, especially in these days in China. In the big cities like Beijing, Shanghai, the prices are going up so quickly. I guess most of the young people couldn't afford to buy one.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why you sleep here at night, as I know.
Yeah, that's why I need two cushions. And that's why, you know, before we had that one episode about this.